Howdy. Lao Shi Lawrence McElroy here for Water Tiger School of Taijiquan. And we're back shooting again at about a 2-week mark. Heads up, we're probably, we're talking seriously about resetting this to every 3 weeks. Let's just say our plate is as full as yours would probably be at Thanksgiving, and leave it at that. So there you go. Pretty sure, my Iowan is showing. Pretty sure that the next video will be another stretching video, very specific part of the body stretching video. So there's that. But today we are going to warm up with the fourth of the 5 loosening exercises from Huang Xingxiang. And I'll talk about that a little bit more, preview sort of the components for which we want to focus, find the focus. We probably have talked about that in the previous, all of the last few Tai Chi Qigong, well, no, not the Qigong ones, but the Tai Chi videos have introduced exercise 1, exercise 2, and exercise 3. So after this one, we'll just have exercise 5 left. And then we're going to spend a little bit of time with something that, again, has sort of been a part of the various Tai Chi videos since we started this show. It was probably the wrong word. This YouTube channel. There we go. That's the right way to refer to where we are posting these. Way back in March of 2020, lost my train of thought there. I know some of you probably think I can't even work up a good caboose. But anyway, and that's joint-to-joint movement. So we just want to sort of drill into that a little bit. As an important aspect, foundation, place where we need to focus when we move in our Tai Chi. So there you go. No need to do anything else before the warm-up. I will, however, remove the sweatshirt. And this is a shirt that has not appeared. If you follow this series, we've done our best in the 2+ years to always put me in a different t-shirt. So this one's sort of new to the collection. I don't know if you can see that, but it is The Power of 4 by Tony Horton. And I'll talk about that in a moment. I'm not really shilling for Mr. Horton, and there's the back. I love the back, right? We use this phrase a lot on the mat, in the room, and remotely for things Water Tiger, do your best and forget the rest. Don't judge. Don't even judge on your previous self, let alone who else is in the room playing with you, or in Mr. Horton's case, working out. I'm not really shilling for Tony. I just want to mention that he is actually one of the reasons that we started the YouTube channel, because as we entered lockdown, as the world shut down in March of 2020, he started offering free sessions of plyo and yoga and other things Facebook Live-wise. So we decided that was pretty good. The secondary consideration was the place where we rent our studio space. This isn't our studio space. This is where we shoot the video. It just happens to be the basement of my home. Was also sort of doing that a little bit. But it was primarily Tony that sort of shoved us in this direction. But as we went through the pandemic, Tony decided he's on his own now. You may know him from P90X and Beachbody and that sort of thing, but he's on his own now, and he decided it was time to launch his own products. And he recruited people to be the guinea pig, sort of, normally the process is you put together a workout, you hire a bunch of people to come to a gym, and you run a test program. Well, he recruited online for test subjects. Lao Shi Lawrence McElroy was one of them. So this is the final product that launched a few months ago, The Power of 4, which is food, fitness, nutrition, food, fitness, supplementation, and mindfulness. Those are actually 4 things that we could say that, we do in the Chinese arts as well. But anyway, if you're interested, check it out. If you're not interested, okay. They ain't easy. But anyway, so there you go. That's the t-shirt. So the Huang Xingxiang, Gotta slow down my language here. These just recently entered the Water Tiger School lineage. A while back, one of our handouts was a two-part publication of an essay that Huang Xingxiang wrote for his lineage, for a book published for his lineage. And it was 13 questions and answers on the Tao of taijiquan. And in the second part, it was published in Taijiquan Journal, I think it was autumn and winter, autumn of 2000, winter of 2001. But anyway, the question was, how should the movements be practiced in order that they can be applied usefully? And in that one answer that was a few column inches, he actually began with using the 5 loosening exercises as an example, that they contain the principles of Tai Chi, and if you understand intent and the principles of Tai Chi through the 5 loosening exercises, you will be able to apply the movements of your Tai Chi form or the postures appropriately or usefully. And also at the end, he mentioned it again, to apply your, if you're unable to apply your movements usefully, you have not understood the 5 loosening exercises. And that was the only reference. So we did some research, we dug them up. And they are now part of the Water Tiger School lineage. So there you go. As you perform these 5 loosening exercises, all 5, and to various differences, because they are, some of them are quite similar. This one, the 4th one, sort of almost stands out on its own, and the 5th one does as well in a different way. But the movement should always be organic, through the whole body, and continuous. Though movement in this exercise in the lower body may seem not continuous in the legs, in the lower body. It involves a forward fold. So there's your first warning, Will Robinson. Some of you may not be able to do this because you can't drop your head below your hips for whatever reason. You should relax and focus on the sensations of the body, including, but not limited to, things like allowing, listening, alignment, vertical axis, rotating, breathing, grounding, intent, and the different directions. So forward, back, left, right, upwards, and downwards, as well as joint to joint kinds of movement. So joint to joint movement. And how small movements from the center and through the whole body can generate bigger movements at the extreme. So generally there's an inhale on the rise and an exhale on the sink, though that's not always the case through the 5 exercises. And we often refer to, in the Water Tiger School lineage, our 10-piece Tai Chi Qigong breathing set, which is sort of a customized combination of the primary and coiling stationary sets of Tai Chi Qigong, as complexity wrapped in simplicity. And these 5 loosening exercises are also that it doesn't seem like you're doing a lot, but there is a lot going on. So this is very much a compound exercise. I mentioned that it involves a forward fold. So ideally, your feet are about shoulder wide. However, this exercise involves, hopefully, palms on the ground. So to be able to do that, some may have to have a broader stance. Another variation is simply living with the fact you can't get your palms on the ground. And while others may be using the ground to stop a particular movement, in some instances, you will just use sort of the organic fade of the movement, which we do, regardless of our range of motion, a couple of times in this particular exercise. You also need to know, when I bow at the beginning and at the end, it's like this. The closed right fist represents, in the yin-yang symbol, the white, the yang, the knowledge, the ability to fight. This, the open left hand over the top, represents the black, the yin, the choice not to. We're going to change that. It's going to be the left hand, and sort of, some people might call this a leopard palm or something. But the fingertips are folded just to the base of the fingers, and the right hand cups and the palms of the hands are together. So that's the position you need to know. And that happens 3 times, twice. The other movements, we'll get to them as well. Let me preview them. Right? So just so you have an idea of what you may be getting yourself into. I don't know why I'm taking a broader stance. So the knees are slightly open. You start with the exhale for the drop to bring the hands sort of over the acupuncture point for the Shyan. And then leading a little bit more like with the elbows than we have in previous. The arms open up on the inhale, and on the exhale, and again, sort of coming to the Shyan acupuncture point, and you repeat that 3 times. On the third sync, there's a hold, 3, 2, 1. A butterfly of the hands, opening, and then a forward fold. And the bend of the knees should take you to palms on the ground, ideally. And by the way, I'm not going to collapse my head. I'm not going to look up like I am now because I want to look at the camera. But I'm not letting the head just hang. My neck is active. And then ideally I straighten the legs, still keeping the palms on the floor. Then I raise the torso high enough that the pads of my fingers are on the ground. And then I start a movement at the center that starts to swing back, and that's 1 pair, 2 pair, and at 3, ideally palms of the hands on the ground, stop the swing. And then you raise up high enough that your fingers and hands don't touch the ground. And then you do a little shimmy for a 10 count. I don't count 10 shimmies. I simply do a countdown from 10, 10, 9, 8, 7, etc. And then you let that movement fade. And then 8 pairs of swings. I'm going to swing to the left first. My right hand's going to tap on the front of my shin and calf on that side. My left hand, and that's the palm of the hand and the finger pads, the back of my left hand is going to tap on the back. And then I swing back and forth for 8 pairs. And then once again, I allow that movement to end organically. Then I shimmy for 3, 2, 1. Lower enough that I can touch my pads of my fingers to my toes. Then I allow the head to collapse and the neck to collapse. I bend the knees, but I raise the shoulders and the torso so my hands don't get any closer to the floor. And then I slowly come up, sink down, and repeat for a second rinse, if it were. So that's your preview. There's a lot going on. It really does loosen things up. You get a little forward fold action, but the knees are open mostly. So it's not like a wide leg hamstring stretch or anything. But it opens up the lower back, or can. But if you have lower back issues, you may not be able to do this. I suppose I haven't seen anything that says that you can't, but you might like grab a stool or a carton or something like that. So if you can't reach the ground, you have something close that you can use to do the stops as I described in the exercise. So the 4th loosening exercise from Huang, Xingxiang, and his 5 loosening exercises. So remember those notes. Organic movements, mindful of all different aspects, including intent, including type of movement, including direction of movement, including how a little movement can create bigger movements at the extremities, etc. Finding an exhale, just a little sink. Inhale, sort of a little bit more elbow-centric rise than we've seen previously. And then ideally back to an exhale. Hands separate when they need to. Turn palm in. Ideally an inhale, here's 2. Exhaling ideally. Nice full relaxed breath, just the regular amount. I shouldn't be inhaling more or exhaling more than normal, just the regular amount, paced over the time I give it. This is the third one. Butterfly the hands open, that slight raise, and then follow the hands down. Keeping the head and neck active so they don't hang. Palms on the floor, bending the knees, straightening the knees, yet still ideally keeping the palms on the floor. Then raising the torso high enough to the pads. Then find that organic movement to begin the first swing back. There's one pair, here's two. There's the end of three, so that stops it. Raising the torso up high enough so the hands and the fingers don't touch the ground. Shimmy the shoulders. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let that fade organically, as we have with pieces from Awakening the Qi. And then again, start that swing from the center, small movement, and there's 1 and 1, 2 and 2, 3 and 3, 4 and 4, 5 and 5, 6 and 6, 7 and 7, 8 and 8, and then let them fade. Should have been a hold on that last one. That was my brain kicking in. And then 3, 2, 1. Lower, touch the ends of your toes in your shoes or bare feet. Bend the knees, raising the torso a little bit, letting the head hang. Rolling up, straightening the legs, rolling up. Seeking as much as possible, placing one vertebra at a time against an invisible wall behind you. And then find a moment to exhale. And round 2. Here's 1. Remember, fingertips to the base of the fingers, palm to palm. Holy Palmer's Kiss. What's that from? Here's 2. Inhalation on the way up, ideally. Exhalation on the way down. One more, we'll make 3. Which means about the time the hands reach the center of the chest, sort of in what would be prayer hands position for a lot of people. Slight rise, butterflying the hands open, and then following the hands down. Neck, head is active, not hanging off the shoulders as we would probably do in a regular forward fold, bending the knees, straightening the legs, palms flat, high enough that just the pads, back of the fingers can reach the floor, ideally, perfect world. Find an organic swing back, and at 3 pairs, palms on the ground, rise up, shimmy, nothing in the hand, 10 of the 2 touching the ground. Probably at 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let that fade, and then 1 and 1, 2 and 2, 3 and 3, 4 and 4, 5 and 5, 6 and 6, 7 and 7, 8 and 8. Once that stops, then 3, 2, 1. Let that fade. Allow the head to drop. Bend the knees, touch the tips of the toes. Straighten the legs. Press in the vertebrae against the invisible wall behind you. No coming to the Shya Dan Tia. Just letting the arms, the hands rest against the body. And there you go. The fourth of the 5 loosening exercises. So I hope that made sense. So I made some references to movement from the center as we did that. Joint to joint movement a little bit in the opening. Those kind of things are always there, right? A lot of times when Water Tiger starts a student at doing something like ward off or parting the wild horse's mane, for instance, parting the wild horse's mane, in our lineage, this is the end of posture. The beginning of posture is holding a ball. And we'll talk about how, in all reality, you could just rotate the shoulder and the hand's going to end about where it needs to end. Please, nobody hit themselves in the center of the chest like I just did, right? And this just drops down. Well, that ain't really joint-to-joint movement. You want to feel that joint-to-joint movement. And one of the first ways that I might suggest you sort of explore that is in one of my favorite exercises. So you'd see it in the early days of the Facebook Live series where we did Lao Shi's favorite warm-ups, and turn and circle was one of them. It's a standard for Water Tiger School. And it's this simple turn and letting the arms wrap around. There's actually the first Huang Xingxiang loosening exercise is a little reminiscent of this movement. But notice, how that hug unfolds, right? As I turn from the center, the shoulder swings, the upper arm, bicep, inside of the biceps and triceps, sort of come across the pec and wrap the front of the body. That takes you to the elbow joint. The elbow joint rolls into the forearm rolls into the wrist rolls into the 5 of the 1, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, one hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of 2. So you sort of feel that sort of joint to joint movement. And that's what we want, right? You don't see, though you could just say this is the same thing happening in the Japanese culture, right? There's no separation of the shoulder joint, elbow joint, wrist joint, joints within the hands. It's all the braids of a rope. And this is what we want to embrace as we move in Tai Chi. We liquefy the body. A joint, basically by definition, is wherever two things come together. And we tend to think as intellectual beings that this is a joint, this is a joint, that is a joint. And then we may be able to agree that that's a joint and that's a joint, that that's a joint and that's a joint and that's a joint. So you have your proximal, intermediate, and distal phalanges in the fingers and the corresponding knuckles. But we don't tend to think about like this space in between. Like there's no joints between the elbow joint and the wrist joint. Well, you have muscle against non-muscle tissue, muscle and tendons against bone. You have muscle and tissue, and in some instances bone against skin. You have these tiny little things that make up your body called cells. And everywhere two cells come together, that's a joint. So we tend to think, well, I'm solid. I can't be liquid. And it's like, depending upon the part of the body is anywhere from like, I think the minimum is about 30% water. And the maximum is somewhere around 70. I have the stats somewhere, but they're not right up there. So there's a lot of water in our body. I knew I forgot to do something. Let's turn that puppy on silent. Sorry guys. So one of the things that I suggest, I say so a lot, I know, I'm sorry, is you start moving at the belly. I once said in a public class, it's like I've never been to a belly dancing class, but I'm imagining that this is probably how they start. And I had a student raise their hand and I called on them and they said they didn't have to raise their hand. But anyway, I called on them and it was Colette. So if you're watching, I think it was you anyway. Colette said, yeah, I've had a belly a belly button, a belly dancing class. And that's exactly how they start, is you start at the center. Now, just let your arms hang, right? One of the few times I might tell someone, like meat on a hook, right? There's a young family principle, no part of the body should hang like meat on a hook. So this is, sort of dessert for some people to be able to allow that. But as you start to move like that from the center, you can start to feel all of the undulations of the muscles, one part of the body, the belly. You might even feel that rounding that we refer to the turning of the Xia Dan Tian, the lower field of elixir, the mystical sphere that we say sets in the cup of the hips. And that turning there starts to turn up through the torso. Not rutabaga, but turn up. Up into the shoulders. I'm a cat dad. I don't have kids, but it seems to be a lot of dad humor this morning. I just sort of feel the undulation down the arm, and you can feel not only that the shoulder joint is moving and the elbow joint is moving, but you can sort of feel the flesh carry that wave that's starting at the center. And loosen the legs as well, so they're not static. I even start to feel the same sensation if you're relaxed. Remember, tension is the numbing blanket that shuts off our ability to have Xingxiang, listening essence, and listen to what's going on in our body. But you can feel the same sort of roll and undulation from the center into the glutes and the hips and the hip flexors, into the quads and the hamstrings and the abductor and adductors, into the knees. The knees are almost doing rotations now. And you want that sense of looseness as you move through our Tai Chi postures. So if we go back, to instance, to parting the wild horse's mane, and our parting the wild horse's mane, I didn't do the usual train track tape marks. We didn't set those up. Right? But my shoulder width in Water Tiger School, drop of shoulder should split the heels in half. So if I am shoulder wide here by Water Tiger School definition, that means that drop of the shoulder, not anywhere on the very top, not on the outside of the delt, but right at that initial decline, splits that heel in half on that side. Same on this side. Now what's going to be my back foot, I'm just going to do this in a left four stance. I'm going to turn my right foot out on the heel, so the toes are somewhere around a 45, and keeping that side-to-side distance, I'm going to step the left foot, slightly forward, and the toes are toward you. I'm going to square off the hips. This is our back stance, three-quarter back stance. Knee stays pointed the same direction as the back foot, so if you have some tightness, you might be a little bit more shallow, not at the 45, but inside of the 45. Some people, because of injuries and that sort of thing, you may have to be outside of the 45. But again, knee and toe should have the same orientation. You can even bring the ball of the front foot up off the ground if you want to, and then shift forward. And feel, even in that movement can be, if I externalize it, which I'm doing now, you can feel more of that joint-to-joint wave through the lower body. And then make it more subtle and more internal. And then again, we start with a ball. So the ball is about the size of your torso. That allows, in Water Tiger School, for things to unfold the way that we want them to. And now I'm going to lose the top hand. And as I start to turn forward and accentuate that joint-to-joint undulation from the belly up through the body, I can feel that torso and the turn into the shoulder, and not just the shoulder joint, but the delts and all the other parts of the shoulder, then into the biceps and triceps, into the elbow joint, into the forearm, into the wrist, into the hand, and the changes in the 5 of the 1, coming into that in position that's right in front, the center of my chest. So it's a very liquid joint-to-joint movement as opposed to straight up. We can do the same thing with the same arm in Water Tiger's ward off. We start in a ball there as well. In parting wild horse's mane, the top hand goes down, and ward off, it does it sort of an underhand pitch. But in ward off, it ends here, in our ward off from Water Tiger School. So you notice the elbow, you have the bow here, right? The inside of the bow, less compressed than in parting the wild horse's mane, but it's open and it still has the compression and the extension of the bow on the outside. And my palm is not straight up, my elbow is not straight down. It's open and out. And again, a lot of times you could, that arm is almost in the correct position, maybe a little bit tighter. Just swing from the shoulder and stick the hand up there and say, hey, that's ward off. But it's the same type of movement, very much a snap of a whip. Much more defined here, that into the shoulder, it's the flick, can be the flick of throwing a frisbee, right? You don't just stiff arm a frisbee as you throw it. It comes through the whole body. And the shoulder turns into the upper arm turns into the elbow joint turns into the forearm into the wrist, and the wrist into the 10 of the 2. And though, by definition, I still have the delicate lady hands, at that end of posture, you feel that extension that is the snap of the whip before it becomes the next thing, into rollback. So joint to joint movement that should, as it goes down through the arm, be, watching my monitor more than I am watching you guys, sorry. Shoulder into upper arm into elbow joint into forearm into wrist into the hand, and the hand into the 5 of the 1. And ideally, even feeling that same type of undulation, that same joint-to-joint movement from the first knuckle into the proximal phalange, into the second knuckle, into the intermediate phalange, into the third knuckle, into the distal phalange. And feeling that separation and that joint to joint and that aliveness in our motion as well. Water Tiger School's wave hands like clouds. A lot of people do. Some version of this, probably not as stiff as I just did it. But our movement in Water Tiger School for cloud hands is very loose, relaxed, and more organically based. But there too, you see the joint to joint movement that is that wave through the body. And it's not making things happen. It's coming through the body, waving. And we want to find that and explore that and manifest that and maintain that in all of our form play. And, depending upon the floor exercise, most of our floor exercises as well. So loosen, relax, allow. You cannot make joint to joint movement happen. You have to allow for it. Allow the body, the movement, and the intent behind the movement unfold in a son, dynamic relaxation, surrendered resilience, relaxed readiness sort of way. But that jointed, and the thing is, you have to remember that we also embrace at Water Tiger School. Part of me moves, all of me moves. Part of me is still, all of me is still. So in all reality, that movement that I describe in parts as shoulder into upper arm into elbow joint into forearm into wrist into hand into the 5 of the 1, not truly happening only consecutively, one after another, but also that consecutiveness of the movement is happening concurrently at the same time. So it is traveling through the entire limb, through the entire body, all at the same time, joint to joint. I hope that made some sort of sense. I hope you enjoyed our little deep drill into joint to joint movement. I hope you had fun. I hope you didn't find my, what I would probably call dad jokes, terrible or distracting or something. But anyway, so there you go. Again, as we announced at the beginning of this video, probably switching this to every 3 weeks instead of every 2 weeks, just because of what's on our plate currently. A lot of things going on just business-wise, and also, within the studio. And at this time, as we shoot this video, have yet to finish all of the archive for our World Tai Chi Day that happened on April 30th. The report is up on the website archive, but we haven't really started on the gallery yet, and that should finish things off for this year's event. So there you go. Again, hope this was useful to you. If for no other reason, if you have, if your lineage talks about this stuff just in the completely opposite way, that at least it gives you insight into why we move the way we move. I always feel that, if I can seek to understand the way other people do things, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to start to move their way. But if I understand the why behind why they move that way, then, we can come together. And diversity is the strength of Tai Chi and Qigong, not its weakness, not their weakness. So thank you for your time and attention. As always, on the YouTube channel, we screen all of the comments simply because if we leave it to YouTube's algorithms, they let stuff get through that, are hot links to hot people. And we just rather prefer that not in our comments. But good or bad, constructive criticism is always welcome. Flaming, no, we won't let that go through. But negative comments, positive comments, both will go through. And then we also post a link on our Facebook page, which is a little bit more open, but sort of under the same rules. So there you go. Again, probably 3 weeks. We'll see. Just going to give a nod to the fact that generally across the country, with now 3 prominent subvariants, I held up 4. Guess I was thinking of my t-shirt, Power 4. 3 subvariants of Omicron that are all highly infectious. The rates are still really, really high in most places. So be careful, it's wet out there. Some of you may remember that phrase from a different virus. And there you go. Thank you very much for your time and attention. We'll catch you next time with a very specific stretch. Only